This show has been a constant surprise every single episode. I mean, the first handful of minutes here, getting to see Kirito-kun discount version, Schwartz's goddess appear, looming over like just a menacing apocalypse, turns out just a sleepy goddess who very much is a neat and otaku, a weeb. I mean, the fact that she is so into that kind of like isekai formula about how like, oh yes, the darker the things are, the more almost edgy the main character wants to be, the more powerful they will become. And that's why you were granted this amazing sword, because your desires are just completely perfectly matching what a hero should be in a story like this. As you have the kind of mocking of being like, wait a second, why the goddess of love send a hero as well? Well, you're obviously much more pathetic than my Kirito-kun over here, so I'm not going to worry about it all too much. As you just kind of casually have a slave trader, that poor elf girl, I mean, the shit that she's been through, going from having her forest burned down, her deity being slain and eaten and sold off like a wild boar, to being basically transported because you were the most pretty of them all, needing to be sacrificed. And then what happens after you're getting a little bit kind of like, you know what, this shit's been bad for me, but at the very least, I'm being worshipped as the most beautiful of them all. I can probably swindle my way out of this. And then what happens? Tachibana comes in and is your replacement. So not only do you get to live with the guilt knowing that the person who continues to cause you harm is the person who has ruined your life for like the past week. This show is comedy gold, and I love the kind of like continuing relationship between Jinguji and Tachibana. That simple scene in the apartment, the idea that, because for Tachibana, right, she's not okay not having a powerful weapon, not understanding that Jinguji is her powerful weapon. Like, he can literally one-shot KO pretty much anything, and is very much like these two lovebirds, even though they both refuse to admit it. Like, they gonna date at some point. It doesn't matter if Tachibana goes back to being a guy or not. They gonna be a couple one way or another. And I think the reason Jinguji probably like scratched out that book, kind of proving that, you know, for her anyway, she's trying to say that, no, it's just you're a tool for me. You're an item. You're not a weapon. We can't look at it that way. I think Jinguji probably wrote something childish, like something along the nature of like, I want to be next to Tachibana for life, or something like that. It's not going to be like, I love Tachibana, something that on the nose, but it's probably something along the nature of, I never want to be separated or something, and that's why he scratched it out, because it was so embarrassing. These two lovebirds, though, just watching the dynamics kind of blossom as they have, I think, one of their, like, real first fights as, like, pretty much a couple would seem. I mean, even the squid trader there, who turns out to be a slave trader who wants to sacrifice the most pretty thing, I mean, very much was like, oh, God, you guys having a fight, you know, a good full stomach will make everything better. And I love how just the absurd things that will go through Jinguji's mind, being like, you know what, you think I'm going to be in the palm of your hands, but really you're dancing in the palm of mine. Just when you think the show can't get more stupid, more wild, more batshit insane, they find a way to one-up themselves. And I love seeing some of the new kind of character design moments in this episode, because we've seen kind of like the elongated arms, the almost pop team epic designs on Tachibana, but it was nice to have Jinguji kind of really steal the show at multiple points, honestly, of him just really being shocked and just not wanting to deal with this bullshit. But seriously, like, I mean, if Schwartz wasn't good enough on his own, I am so glad to see that his goddess is equally as memorable in terms of the otaku craze, and the fact that immediately they all bow down to worship, I thought was fantastic, because as much as this guy is, like, in his own head, thinking he's the big bad shit of the world, ultimately he's a hero, all things considered. I mean, he has a sword that can cut through an entire stack of buildings like it's paper mache. And even though he doesn't understand what the hell he's doing, the fact that he so casually pulls God from thin air, and basically God is saying, you're the hero everyone should worship. I mean, it's understandable why everyone would start worshiping. But I think one of the cuter moments of this episode was kind of tying back, it was either last week or the week before, about the idea that this is kind of like a vacation to them. I absolutely adore the fact that Jinguji refuses to kind of like just sit by and get 3 free meals a day and a nap whenever, because, you know, they are children, so we need to give them a nap. The fact that they wouldn't be free truly to live this like a vacation, even though there's all these hell-like elements kind of surrounding them. I love how, like, without explicitly saying I love you, there is so many times it feels like both of them are saying I love you, and the fact that if they were to ever actually get into a relationship, I am almost firmly convinced we wouldn't see a kiss, we wouldn't see anything super romantic, we would just see them both kind of like turn their backs to one another, be like, I guess we can be a thing. Yeah, sure, whatever. And that's how the story would end, because these two, they are just so perfect yet dysfunctional together, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Like this show, now that we're halfway through its first season of hopefully its first season, this better not be a one and done deal, because the voice actors are continuing to sell it with that perfect art design. I mean, like I mentioned, pop team epic, some kind of Western influence with Looney Tunes designs, everything else in between. It's so fantastic to watch this come to life, and reading it just wouldn't be the same thing for me now that I'm so accustomed to these voices and the presentation and everything like that. But I really do like the story about the goddesses and how, like, it actually is following a typical isekai story. Transported to a world, a goddess gives you things. Apparently not all the goddesses are actually shitty. I mean, just look at Schwartz. I mean, his goddess is actually probably the best you could hope for if you are put into this world. I mean, comparing the goddess of love and the shit that they went through, comparing what Schwartz is going through, his goddess is hyping him up like a hype beast. I mean, our goddess of love is basically just a big old troll who probably is just trying to play a prank and have some fun against the other goddesses, and in return, Jinguji and Tachibana are kind of getting the short end of the stick. But it's really fun to see how the character relationships are continuing to blossom while actually telling a story that feels isekai and anime, while just taking the piss out of pretty much every isekai trope and gimmick we've come to know and love or know and hate. And no matter if you love this type of genre or hate it, I think it just has a little bit of everything for everyone, and that's what makes it so damn fantastic. I would absolutely love it if there was another hero that was summoned as well, just for even more bullshit. Like, not even like have a different goddess pop up, just have like the goddess of love just summon like 12 different people, just to really, piss off everyone, because they're gonna think like, oh man, we think we're the hero, we're gonna get all these special rewards, and then imagining like Jinguji and Tachibana interacting with someone of the goddess of love summoned and being like, wait, so not only did she screw us over in this way, we also have to compete for the same affection of this bullshit goddess that we don't want. There's just a lot of ways that you can write in your head how this kind of insanity will continue to flourish. And no matter what way I look at it, it's fantastic. Now, I do imagine that Elf is probably going to find a way to also get sacrificed just out of pride, because, there's no way Tachibana is more beautiful. Sacrifice me. Well, shit, why not sacrifice two pretty ladies? And something like that's probably going to happen as, Jinguji is going to come in and just absolutely annihilate everyone. But I do like the kind of like further clarification on Tachibana's power about how her like influence and charm worked on people. Like, look at the leader of that village in terms of it wasn't until like she was revealed to have like divine worship that he latched herself on. Each person has like pride or lust for power, like different things will affect her kind of like beauty to be attached to them. And it's kind of interesting to see how they're continuing to explore those finer details when it easily could have just been a slapstick comedy. And even though that slapstick comedy is the main focus, all the little elements actually turn this into a pretty amazing show, all things considered. But thoughts and feelings on this week's episode of Total Fantasy Knockout. What do you hope to see with next week now that sacrifices are on the table? Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here. Until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.